ये जो है ये सांप और सीढ़ी की तरह है, आप स्टेप बाय स्टेप लैडर से ऊपर जाते हैं, लेकिन एक एंडोफ्थेल्माइटिस का केस आपको सांप की तरह कई स्टेप्स नीचे ले आता है, एंड दैट इज़ नॉट ओनली अ फाइनेंशियल इशू, जो उसमें मॉरल डिवैल्यूएशन होती है आपकी एज एन ऑप्थेल्मोलॉजिस्ट, दैट इज़ इमेंस। हम हर कोशिश करते हैं कि किसी ना किसी तरह इस कॉम्प्लिकेशन को प्रिवेंट करें, और उसमें बड़े अरसे से बड़ा कुछ आता रहा, प्री ऑप एंटीबायोटिक्स, पोस्ट ऑप एंटीबायोटिक्स, पर ऑपरेटिव एंटीबायोटिक्स, पोविडोन आयोडीन, मतलब जो कुछ भी है। और मेरा ख्याल है दिस इज समथिंग जिसपे हम सब पैरानॉइड होते हैं और ओवरडू करना चाहेंगे रादर देन अंडर डूइंग। ओवरडू करने में मुख्तलिफ चीज़ें, हर जो ड्रॉप है, हर जो इंजेक्शन है, उसके साइड इफ़ेक्ट्स होते हैं। तो हम इस पे डिस्कस करेंगे कि हमारे पास नई मोडालिटीज़ क्या अवेलेबल हैं टू काउंटर दिस कॉम्प्लिकेशन। और सेकेंडली ड्राई आई। आजकल के ज़माने में अगर किसी का ख्याल है कि ड्राई आई जो है दैट इज़ नॉट अ सिग्निफिकेंट डिजीज़, तो दैट इज़ अ शॉर्ट स्टेटमेंट। मेरे पास कई पेशेंट आए हैं इवन फ्रॉम अब्रॉड जो जॉब छोड़ने के लिए तैयार हैं बिकॉज ड्राई आई ने उनको इतना सवेयर सिम्टोमेटिकली डिसेबल किया हुआ है कि दे आर अनएबल टू कंटिन्यू दोज जॉब्स। और जब आप आजकल स्टूडेंट से लेकर किसी से भी पूछें तो 10 से 12 घंटे मिनिमम स्क्रीन टाइम है, और ये वो बड़ा खींच के बताते हैं। अगर हम अपना ही टाइम देख लें तो आई एम श्योर सुबह उठने से रात सोने तक, इवन खाना खाते हुए भी हम स्क्रीन्स को देख रहे होते हैं। दैट इज़ वन फैक्टर, और उसमें फिर पोल्यूशन एंड दैट, तो उसको भी हम आज डिस्कस करेंगे कि उस पर हमने क्या करना है। बिफोर वी स्टार्ट, आई वुड रिक्वेस्ट प्रोफेसर तनवीर चौधरी टू चेयर द सेशन। सर, काइंडली टेक योर चेयर। सो द फर्स्ट प्रेजेंटेशन, जो मैंने आपको कहा, जो ड्रेडेड कॉम्प्लिकेशन है, इन्फेक्शन इन द आई, we have a new drug, and Dr. Muhammad Hassan Ali would let us know what are the advantages of this new molecule.
Quite refreshed now after a very beautiful lunch. Please remain awake, do not sleep if you have overeaten. So I'm Dr. Muhammad Hassan Ali. I'm currently working as Assistant Professor of Ophthalmology at Allama Iqbal Medical College, Jinnah Hospital, Lahore. And today I'm going to talk about Pakistan's first Dumet technology antibiotic, which is going to be used in various kinds of infections. So the title of my discussion is Unveiling the New Alpha, a complete arsenal for surgical care. So first of all, we have to understand the emerging therapeutic crisis and need for potential novel antibiotics. So the thing is, there have been multiple studies that show that various kinds of infections affect our eye, and one of the most common infections are bacterial infections. So various studies have reported their prevalence, and some reports have stated that the bacterial infections are far more common than the viral infections. Similarly, a study from Pakistan showed in children especially that it's almost 24% had very significant bacterial growth in them. And another study from Pakistan reported that 61% of our children are getting affected with various kinds of bacterial infections as opposed to 36% in adults. So the problem is when we use antibiotics, the problem that arises with overuse of antibiotics is antibiotic resistance, as you all are well aware of that. And the antibiotics that we have been using in ophthalmology include tobramycin, ofloxacin, moxifloxacin, and we have had multiple kinds of antibiotic resistance against these antibiotics. And for example, 64% of the patients are resistant to tobramycin, 73% ofloxacin, and 65% have been shown to have MRSA, which is resistant to ciprofloxacin. This is the report of one of my patients who developed a very bad infection, and just see here, this patient was resistant to moxifloxacin. That was crazy. It was shocking for us that what kind of antibiotic will you give to this patient if he is basically resistant to moxifloxacin. But that poses a big challenge to us to discover novel antibiotics that can help us cope with these kinds of organisms that are resistant to various kinds of drugs. So that is why we say that if the resistance is growing, elevate your defense system. And here comes the new alpha, which is a new novel molecule, which is becifloxacin, that is going to be effective against various kinds of infections, and how I'm going to show you. So we are introducing for the very first time Pakistan's first broad spectrum antibiotic with Dumet technology. I'm going to talk about that also in the subsequent slides. So Becidrop is a fluoroquinolone antibiotic formulated as an ophthalmic solution, and the FDA approval is primarily against bacterial infections. And becifloxacin 0.6%, basically is a chlorophenolquinone with potent broad-spectrum antibacterial activity and favorable pharmacokinetic profile. So it provides an enhanced potency, balanced dual targeting, higher barrier resistant, and exclusive for topical use. Now the thing is, I'm going to talk about a little bit about its DUMET technology. The first of all, the basic mechanism for the resonance is that this is a fluoroquinolone which has dual inhibition of DNA gyrase and topoisomerase 4. And let us talk about its some of the characteristic features of this drug and what are its major attributes. The 5 major attributes are: it has a unique chemical structure, and it has DUMET technology, isotonic behavior, chelation properties, and thermoreversible gelation property. Now, this is the DUMET technology which has been launched for the very first time in Pakistan. The problem is, whenever you instill a drop, we want its effect to last as long as possible. So this drug is basically forming a gel on the surface of the eye when we instill it, and that gel stays for a longer period of time on the surface of the eye. And by staying longer on the surface of the eye, it provides effect for a longer duration of time. So this DUMET technology, these two molecules, polycarbophil and polyoxamer, provide us basically a gel that provides smart gel matrix, sustained drug release that prolongs the retention time of the drug and improve bioavailability of this drug. Then it has disodium aditate, which is a chelating agent that binds divalent metal ions, and this disodium aditate destabilizes the bacterial cell wall and enhances antimicrobial efficacy. This is also for the very first time that has been added in this drug. So the unique profile of this drug is it is an innovative technology that provides flexible dosing 4 to 12 hours apart, and then it stays for longer period of time on the surface of the eye for up to 12 hours, and it provides better bacterial killing as shown in the subsequent studies in my next slides. Okay, so resistance among first-line drugs. Remember, in today's world, most of the time we're using moxifloxacin, right? So we have to be cautious if we are continuously using this kind of drug and our patients develop resistance to that, that becomes a big problem for our patient. We do not have any other solution for those kinds of organisms. So let us see how becifloxacin performs in actual real-time patients. So this was a study that basically compared the efficacy of becifloxacin with 3 other antibiotics. And what it found that basically they used this antibiotic against various kinds of resistant strains, including Haemophilus influenzae, Streptococcus pneumoniae, Staph aureus, and Staph epidermidis. And this was the results of the study. There were 25% Haemophilus, 27% Staph pneumoniae, Streptococcus pneumoniae, Staph aureus 13%, and MRSA resistance in 65%. Now, this is something very important to understand. So, against methicillin-sensitive Staph aureus, the MIC90 of becifloxacin was 4-fold to 128-fold more potent than other fluoroquinolones. So, just compare here, you need 1 microgram of becifloxacin to achieve the same efficacy or the result that you require from 4 microgram of moxifloxacin. And in the past days, you have been using ciprofloxacin. You need to have 128 micrograms of ciprofloxacin to reach the same level as you do with just 1 microgram of becifloxacin. That was a remarkable result out of this study. Now moving on, MRSA, methicillin-resistant strain. So you need 4 micrograms of becifloxacin to achieve the same efficacy as you require 64 micrograms of moxifloxacin. That shows the potency of this drug. Okay, and I'm not comparing it with the rest of the drugs because they are now kind of obsolete and we do not use that more frequently like ciprofloxacin. But just compare Beci with Moxi here. It is 4 micrograms and you need 64 micrograms of moxifloxacin to reach the same efficacy. Similarly, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus epidermidis, again 4 microgram here, 32 micrograms of moxifloxacin. So they summarize that becifloxacin offers higher ocular tissue concentration, potent dual target antibacterial action, and lower resistance rates. Now, why the resistance is lower? Because this is a novel antibiotic. It has not yet been used widely worldwide. So if there is a new antibiotic, the resistance is definitely going to be lower against that. Now, we are always concerned about the safety of this drug. We have to see, is this drug safe for our patients or not? So there was a study that compared the efficacy and safety of becifloxacin ophthalmic solution in children and adults with bacterial conjunctivitis, and they found out that it was absolutely safe and effective for the treatment of bacterial conjunctivitis in children and adolescents from 1 to 17 years of age. Now, the topic which is very close to our heart is antibiotic prophylaxis against after cataract surgery. So let us review a study that was conducted to see the comparison of becifloxacin with moxifloxacin after cataract surgery. So this study was published in Clinical Ophthalmology that basically divided the patient into two groups. One patient received moxifloxacin, the other received becifloxacin. And these are the results of this study. So they concluded the minimum inhibitory concentration of becifloxacin against MRSE was 8-fold lower than that of the moxifloxacin. Both drugs worked well. So that was a big finding, which means that becifloxacin is non-inferior to moxi. But look at this concentration. You require much lesser concentration of this drug as opposed to moxifloxacin against methicillin-resistant staph epidermidis. And they concluded that becifloxacin appeared more effective in reducing bacterial counts on eyelids of patients undergoing cataract surgery, with significant reductions as early as 1 hour post-dose compared with moxifloxacin. So, and this becifloxacin was more active in vitro against MRSC. So we have Besi Drop now. So it has DuoMat technology. It provides prolonged residence time on the surface of the eye due to this DuoMat technology because it forms a gel matrix on the surface of the eye. Then it enhances drug concentration. You have flexible dosing frequency, generally 3 to 4 times a day, improved bioavailability, and low systemic exposure. So I would like to end my talk by thanking you all for your very patient attention. If you have any questions or comments, you're more than welcome now.
Any questions? Otherwise, we can take the questions at the end.
मैं एक कमेंट कर सकता हूँ. Thank you. Good, excellent talk. Inducted into it कि हम एंटीबायोटिक को भी टेपर ऑफ करते हैं, तो आई फील कि वी डू ओवर ट्रीट पेशेंट्स. दूसरी बात जो इसमें इम्पॉर्टेंट है कि इट्स नॉट ओनली एंटीबायोटिक, देयर आर लॉट्स ऑफ पेशेंट्स हु follow poor hygiene. And whoever is putting drops in, you have to teach the patient and the attendant as well कि आपने ड्रॉप्स कैसे डालने हैं. बहुत अच्छे ड्रॉप्स बहुत गंदी बॉटल से निकलते हुए, हमने आगा खान में एक दफ़ा एक सर्वे कराया था. जो ड्रॉप्स डालते थे, बार बार ड्रॉप्स डालते थे, उनकी टिप्स का कल्चर कराया था. रिज़ल्ट क्या आया था वो मैं बाद में शेयर करूँगा. थैंक यू
सर. जो सेकंड हमने चीज़ डिस्कस की थी शुरू में, दैट वाज ड्राई आइज़. एक मैं आपको छोटी सी सिनेरियो देता हूँ कि जिन पेशेंट्स को हम अपने हॉस्पिटल्स में या क्लिनिक्स में डायलेट करते हैं, तो उनसे डायलेशन के बाद मेरा पहला सवाल होता है कि इस कतरे से क्या हुआ. बेसिकली वो इसलिए होता है कि हम उनसे ये पूछना चाहते हैं कि कितनी विजन ब्लर हुई. मोर देन 90% का एक जवाब होता है कि जी इससे स्टिंगिंग बड़ी ज़्यादा हुई. तो आप इससे अंदाज़ा लगाएं कि उसको ब्लरिंग की फिक्र नहीं है, लेकिन उसको जो स्टिंगिंग ने तंग किया वो उसको याद है. और यही चीज़ हमारी जो कंप्लायंस है टू ट्रीटमेंट पेशेंट की तरफ से, उस पर मेजर फैक्टर है कि अगर उसको ऑक्यूलर सरफेस डिसऑर्डर होगा और जो ड्रॉप्स हैं उनके प्रिजर्वेटिव उसको एनहांस करेंगे. सो द नेक्स्ट टॉपिक by Dr. Muhammad Hamza Khan would be regarding this issue.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you very much for the opportunity for me to speak here in front of the lovely audience, and you must have read. My topic is as written, preservative free. I'm in love with preservative free drops, and wherever possible my primary goal is to get the preservative free drops and then give it to the patient. And the reason because preservative free are increasingly important in terms of the ocular facility. They reduces the chance of stinging and they improve the compliance. And if you give it to the patient, then definitely patient's gonna love it. Now, this is the photo. If you don't use the preservative free, it's obviously me, but this is how the patients actually feel like. It's not exaggerated, but this is how they actually feel like. And but why the preservatives are used? So, improve the efficacy, sterility, and shelf life. And the most common, there are other as well, but the most common is the benzalkonium chloride, polychloride, and purite, and there is some other softs other as well. However, my talk is focused will be on the back, which is most commonly available in the other drops. But just give you a brief idea how the ocular system works and what are the layers of the cornea and the tear film. So we know 5 layers of cornea, and the drug does not penetrate to the descemet membrane. Okay, so there are some drug related issues as well if you go to the deeper stromal layers. Now if you talk about the tear film, then you have got 3 layers, isn't it? Mucin, aqueous, and lipid. So if you have a patient who has a lipid layer problem, and if you're giving the drop which covers the aqueous issue, then it's not going to help. Obviously, you can keep just changing the brands, but not going to help. So you need to decide which layer it's going to function, what is the function of the drop, and what are the end result you are starting to get. Not just because you just give the drop because this is a good drop in the new market and you just give it. It's not like that. You have to think about it, which layer. Now, the other thing which I just want to show you about the glaucoma drops which we usually give. The reason I put the glaucoma here is obviously because one of the leading cause of blindness, and in Pakistan as well the prevalence is very high. And we have all used these drops at some point in our life, isn't it? In some point in our journey. But to show you the concentration of the preservative in it, it just looks like that it's very less, isn't it? It's like 0.04, 0.02, 0.03, and then you go to Xalatin, it's 0.02. So I'm not against any medication, okay? They all are the very good drops. They keep the pressure down, but obviously nothing comes free in the world. So they have the downside as well. And the downside, just focus on the drop name, Xalatin, Lumigan, okay? Or you can say Azopt as well, or Betagan, whatever. But look at the percentage, and this is what it does. It looks scary. It looks that, oh my goodness, there's only 0.004%, but definitely significant reduction of the tear film. And if you talk about the Xalatin, which was a 0.02, it causes a delayed corneal wound healing. So if the person is having a glaucoma, having a cataract surgery, if the person having a glaucoma, having a penetrating keratoplasty, DOLC, DMAC, DSAC, whatever the surgery, the delayed corneal wound healing. Okay, sometimes we don't pay attention to the little details. It's not something obviously we always should pay attention, but it's not something that we just avoid, or it's just the ignorance and lack of the knowledge, and we just try to figure out, oh, actually it's a wound healing, or what's the problem? No, it's not like that. Sometimes the answer is in front of you, but you're unable to see. And this is why I see the most important thing is what we don't see actually. So if you take about the concentration level here, 0.004 in the Lumigan and 0.002 in a Xalatin, which is the most common drugs we use for the glaucoma. So I'm not against, as I say, I'm not against any company or any brand or anything, but what I'm trying to convey is that you should always consider what you give to the patient, especially if it's a post-operative patient, especially if the patient is already suffering from the dry eye. Now one can argue, what can we give, because we don't have the glaucoma preservative-free drops in Pakistan. I take that point. Yes, we don't have glaucoma preservative-free drops, and whatever is available, we have to give that, even if it's Xalatin, Lumigan, whatever. But the thing is, if you know the reason is going to damage something, then you cover up with something else, isn't it? So you have to, every action is reaction, so you have to cover it up with the preservative-free drops. And also, not only the benzalkonium talk about the tear film, corneal wound healing, also causes the conjunctival fibrosis. And the people undergoing, especially in the Western world, people undergoing the trabeculectomy, they stop the preservative drops just because it causes the conjunctival fibrosis. Later on, the trabeculectomy will fail. Even after the trabeculectomy, sometimes you might need to put patients on Xalatin, Lumigan, whatever, and then you realize, oh, actually, you know, the trab is getting scarred. Let's give the needling, MMC, etc. But the problem is, because you're keeping the patient of post-trab already on the Xalatin, it's definitely going to cause the trabeculectomy scar. It's not going to work. So the problem is, obviously we don't know that sometime, and we don't pay attention. But as I say, now probably you know, and you can pass on the message that if it's a post-op patient, please don't give the Xalatin or Lumigan or any other glaucoma drops, especially, or if you are giving, then cover it up. Or if you can stop it for some time, for a week, for the glaucoma, nothing gonna happen. His pressure is not gonna go sky high to 50 from 15 if you stop Xalatin for a week. Okay, so this is like a message from here. And then it's also toxic to epithelial damage, conjunctival inflammation. It's all instability. So whenever the tear film gets unstable, obviously the eye as a whole becomes unstable, because this is the first protective layer from any agent, like be bacteria or anything, because it has antibacterial property as well. And preservative-free lubricants obviously accelerate the reepithelialization and reduces the risk. So benefits point of view, if you say gentle on the ocular surface, as I said earlier, reduce the risk of inflammation and allergy, and improve compliance. We all know there's a rise in the dry eye. And the reason, obviously, one of the reason is electronic devices usage, TV, etc. And we are more into the screen times. But the most common thing of the dry eye is obviously the aging population, especially the older age. They loses the goblet cell, they loses the other epithelial cells, and sometimes we just put the things to the screen time, but it's not like that. The dryness was always there, even before the mobile invented, even before the screen invented. But it's just that we are more into diagnosing into it. So, but if we are diagnosing into it, then we have to figure it out how we can provide the comfort to the patient as well. Just to show you a brief prevalence of dry eye disease, in our part of the world, you can see, not our part of the world, you can say our region is 15.8% in India, China, Thailand, Singapore, and Taiwan. This side is more prevalent, and then if you go to the higher up, Canada, there's 28.7%. But unfortunately, I couldn't find the Pakistan data in terms of prevalence. But you can have an idea that it is not only a localized regional thing, it's basically a global thing, and it's a multifactorial disease. And the main culprit is the tear film instability and hyperosmolarity. And sometime, obviously, we don't know what exactly the cause is. It could be aqueous deficiency, and we are giving the drop for the lipid layer problem. It could be a lipid layer problem, but we're giving the drop for the aqueous deficiency. Okay, and then we say the dryness is not getting controlled. So if you come across that situation, my take-home message would be to give the ceramide drops, the autologous ceramide drops. It can cover both if you're unsure. So you can keep the patient on 4 times a day, let's say for 6 months, and then you can taper it down. And this is just a cascade of information, altered tear composition, tear film instability, and then inflammatory markers, ocular surface stress, and then surface damage. And this is just the cycle, just keep going on and on and on. And impact of dry eye, as you say, reading, writing, using computer, professional work, driving. So this increases the chances, and especially in the older people, as I say, you need to pay attention what type of dryness it is, and then treat accordingly, not just the drop. This is a very important tool which was developed from the dry eye disease workshop, DEWS, what we say in a short form, to grade your patient when you see the dry eye patient. Okay, you cannot just say it's a dry eye. You need to grade it so that when the patient comes next time in your clinic, you need to know how much the drop has given the benefit to the patient. Okay, you may be very good in your observation, but sometimes documentation is more important than the observation. And this is, you can get it from the internet. It's Oxford Clinical Scale modified. You can get it easily, and there are lots of empty pages as well. And just download it, keep it in your clinic, and just do the grading so that you know how much a drop has benefited. And then again, the DEWS recommendation is education number 1, and then you put the anti-inflammatory drops. You can give the tetracycline. I've had a good experience of doxycycline in the dry eye patient, and they do really well. And then, as I say, serum drops you can give, and then later on, if not, then you have to give systemic eye drops. Just closing my talk in like a few minutes. Special consideration patients are severe inflammation, always consider preservative free. There could be neurotrophic surface, add serum drops. If it's a post-surgical, you prioritize the preservative free drops, and also high viscosity. Okay, not the lower viscosity drop. And the reason, I'll tell you why. It's a CMC, is a carboxymethyl cellulose, because it's a mucoadhesion, tear film stabilization, wound healing support, and reduction of osmotic stress. So if it's a higher viscosity, it would be bind better, because you're going to keep the drops every 2 hours, 1 hour other as well. So you need something which works for longer time rather than keep putting again and again. This is why I always prefer in my patients. So this is a mini trial I did it. Though the number seems very less, but obviously for a drug which is new, for a drug which is not there, and people might not have experiences before, sometimes people don't take it. But to convince them and then to give them, I have given it to them, which is tear drop UD and the Recuro PF in post-op DMAX, post-op PKs, moderate dry eyes. 30 people out of which 7 said they didn't like it because of the thickness, and 6 was neutral. But I think my take-home message from here would be, if you're giving the Recuro PF, preservative-free, wonderful drop, I love it, I always give it now. But I think not for the younger people, because young people are more into other stuff, computer, mobile, and if you give a high viscosity drop to them, then it's going to last longer and it causes the blurry vision. This is why the 7 negative patients were just because they didn't like it. Which layer? As I say, always think about layers. So lipid layer, they both work indirectly. Okay, they stabilizes, but not the lipid replacement. But the aqueous layer, mucin layer, yes, they both work really well, and that's my personal. No financial interest, although it's a symposium, industry symposium, no financial interest. I have given it to my patients, and very, you can say, double-blinded kind of a thing, and they really liked it. Just other thing, last 2 minutes, other thing which I would like to say, there are other drops available as well which contain different molecule. So again, I'm always patient targeted. Okay, I'm not just blinded by any company or any product. I'm always centered with the patient, what the patient needs. If the patient needs the, you think hyaluronic acid, in terms of the dry eye drops, you give dry eye drop with the hyaluronic acid, okay? And the reason is accelerate the wound healing and anti-inflammatory properties. Again, if the patient, you need the corneal reepithelialization like post-laser, refractive laser, post-DMAC, where we scrape off the epithelium, so you give that, which promotes the reepithelialization. That comes with the carboxymethyl cellulose, which is Recuro. So the reason I'm saying that, don't just get away with the shining or the stars, what are in the galaxy, but try to think yourself as well what drop is needed for the patient. And if I'm giving the patient the high viscosity drop, will they like it for this problem or not, or will they be happy or not? So this is just you're probably knowing is that every drop of benzalkonium is a drop of inflammation, remember, and every preservative-free drop is a drop of kindness. So I rest my case here, and I'm happy in the end because I always use preservative-free. So this is the comparison. And as I say, I think their motto is a be warrior. So I just kept a photo that we should be warrior for the brachyfloxacin as well, which they are promoting. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hamza. Like I said, ocular surface disorder is something which is very underestimated in our management plans.
The platform to say something about the confusion or overlap as far as for me between the allergic and the dry eye. I really didn't know about that. The first two presentations were really so of whatever Dr. Hamza has already told you about it. So Janab, the most common complaints of the patient who are coming in general ophthalmology, I'm not talking about the patient who are entering in subspecialty clinic. So the most common complaints we all know, that's itching, burning, redness, photophobia, blurring of the vision, eye strains, crusting, watering. Then I what really have to answer myself, that is the patient male, female? Definitely it's quite obvious. The age of the patient, is he a computer user, a biker, a contact lens user, bilateral condition, refractive surgeries, because I need to put my patient, or you all know about it, I need to put my patient in one of the two categories, either into the allergic conjunctivitis, or I have to put my patient under the label of dry eye. But up till the recent past, that was my flaw, that I really didn't know about. There could be a strong possibility the patient can have both things together. And yes, there are so many papers available in the literature. I'm just going to mention one meta-analysis. They concluded around 11 studies in which there was more than 7,000 patients. What they mentioned, the patient who have allergic conjunctivitis, 1 to 97% of the people do have dry eye problem. And those who have dry eye, 6 to 37% or 38% of the people do experience allergic conjunctivitis. So it's a very, it is quite obvious overlap between both of them. I know everyone sitting over here, they know about what is allergic conjunctivitis, what is dry eye, but just a bird eye view so that we can target about what Dr. Hamza mentioned, that yes, we have tear instability, we have carboxymethyl cellulose, where to use, how to use, when to use, just at the end of it. So allergic conjunctivitis, so many types, we all know about it. The bottom line is, it's basically IgE mediated or T cell. Most of the time, among them, IgE is the most important factor. So how IgE basically induces the allergic reaction? Stimulate the mast cells. The mast cell will release histamine, heparin, and protease. The histamine is the one which is responsible for itching, burning, irritation. That's acute phenomena. But the heparin and protease will create inflammatory cascade to start. वो एक जैसे dialogue है ना, picture एक बाकी है. So yes, story does not end over here. The mast cell is the one which can through the lipoxygenase and the cyclooxygenase pathway can induce prostaglandins and leukotriene to come into play and finally affect the inflammation. So what happened after the inflammation, as Dr. Hamza rightly mentioned, yes, inflammation is a very dangerous thing. It does two things. One, it damages the ocular goblet cells and that affects the dry eye. And second important thing is the corneal nerves get damaged. अब जिसकी corneal nerves damage हो गई, the irritant which are circulating in the environment, यहाँ तो फिर भी कम है, कराची में तो बहुत ज़्यादा है, तो वो जो allergens घूम रहे हैं हमारे इर्द गिर्द, तो जिसकी corneal nerves damage होंगी, that patient is more prone to get the problems of itching, burning like this, as compared to the person who has got the intact corneal nerves. So corneal nerves is the very important one, which already mentioned in the previous one. So what to target? Do I need to target the allergic, the acute phenomenon by blocking the histamine, or I need to block these one? Luckily, we do have this olopatadine one, that's a dual action one. It's been there for more than a decade. But the important thing that we have 0.7% in the market. The importance of the 0.7%, usually, normally what I observe at my home, कि मेरे बच्चों को जब स्कूल जाना है या किसी को कॉलेज जाना है, तो they are always in hurry. उनकी अम्मा, उनके अब्बा, उनके आखिरी वक्त तक लंच बॉक्सेस से पकड़ा रहे होते हैं. And at that time, if I'm going to instill a drop in my son's eyes, उसको एक ट्रॉमा ज़हन में है कि मेरी आंख में ड्रॉप डालने वाला है. And again, मुझे वो इरिटेशन होगी. And specifically, I would like to mention my city as well, जहाँ पर हम अपने आधा दिन जो है वो सड़कों पे गुजारते हैं. We can't really carry our medication along with us. So yes, 0.7% is the one which can be used just once in a day. Tear substitute, it's a very important one because tear substitute will do the three things. First of all, it will dilute the allergens. The allergens which are there on the ocular surface, it will take away. That is a flush out effect. The important one is the itch rub cycle. Whenever there is irritation, people start rubbing the eye, and that rubbing of the eye causes the mechanical stimulation of the mast cells, and all these things will be released again. So it will reduce the rub, it will do the itch rub cycle, and then it will compensate the goblet cell which have been lost because of the inflammation. We all know about it, skip it up. Dry eye cycle. Now, the word which was mentioned in the Dr. Hamza's presentation, tear film instability and hyperosmolarity and all those things. So it's just the little bit explanation of each and every one of them. Tear film instability means, again, we know that there are three layers. If the evaporation is increased, that's a lipid layer deficiency. How to correct it? It's done by giving the minerals, mineral oil, liposome, and third thing is the cationic emulsion. The cationic emulsion is the key over here. It's basically the combination of three things: water, oil, and third one is surfactant. What surfactant does? Basically, it creates a bond between a positive charged lipid layer and the negative charged mucin layer. And that basically increases the stay time of the medication at the ocular surface. Or we have a decreased aqueous layer, so it should be replaced by viscosity enhancing agent and electrolyte. Both of these things will increase the water content in the aqueous layer. And third one is the decreased wettability. So the decreased wettability, what does that mean? The mucin which is released from the or goblet cells, उसमें एक होता है transmembranous portion of the mucin. Mucin has got three types: gel form, soluble form, and तीसरा वाला एक होता है इनका transmembranous form. The function of the transmembrane is to make the adhesion between the aqueous layer, which is the hydrophilic, and the ocular surface, that's the hydrophobic. So basically it make adhesion between both of them. So it should be replaced by viscosity enhancing agent, and these are the example of that. So whenever we would like to increase the thickness of the aqueous layer, we need to start treating the patient with viscosity enhancing agent. Then comes, if by any means the tear is not working properly, the aqueous is gone up, lipid layer was not good, ultimately what we have, high concentration of solutes, and that will lead to hyperosmolarity. What actually hyperosmolarity does? It causes two things. First of all, it will causes the ocular surface apoptosis to increase, and once the damage of the cell keep on going on, that will damage the mucin layer as well. And this is the way how we need to treat it. The another important thing, hyperosmolarity again lead to the inflammation, the same cascade which we discussed in the previous slides. So inflammation reducing medication, I'm not going to detail one because Dr. Hamza has already mentioned these. I'm not going to waste your time. Already I'm working with phir bhi. Then comes dry eye analyzer report. डॉक्टर हमजा अगेन, आई एम सॉरी, मैंने दवा से डॉक्टर हमजा का जिक्र कर दिया इसलिए कि वेरी गुड प्रेजेंटेशन, लेकिन सारी चीज़ में मौजूद थी. आई एम जस्ट गोइंग टू एक्सप्लेन व्हाट यू हैव जस्ट गॉन थ्रू. वी ऑल नो हमारे पास 3 लेयर्स हैं, हम दवाएं दिए जा रहे हैं और यस हम दवाएं दिए जा रहे हैं और हमें ये नहीं पता कि ऑन विच लेयर वी आर हिटिंग. We do have a dry eye analysis report. I'm not going into the detail of the dry eye analysis report, but yes, the report can tell you each and every layer. So we have something, but every doctor, every patient does not have the access to have it. So now, moving towards the treatment. If I'm talking about anti-allergy medication, what should be the ideal anti-allergy? Although the preservative-free medication should be the first treatment choice, but unfortunately, as far as I know, I don't think so we have any anti-allergy preservative-free eye drop in the Pakistan. So, first thing, मैं जब आँख में drop डालूँ, it should act promptly. Second, it should there for a longer period of time. तीसरी बात, ocular comfort होनी चाहिए, which should be maintained by the pH and also by the isotonicity. And then it should lubricate my eye because the dry eye is still going on. And third thing, sterility and stability. So yes, we do have something with the name of operated Hapta. They have something which can handle these issues. Suppose if you talk about rapid onset action, yes, we have olopatadine. Olopatadine will going to block the histamine, rapid action. Second thing, longer duration, olopatadine 0.7%. That will persist for a longer period of time, although 20-22 hours. Then comes the French menu things, HPCD, PVPK30. बड़ी मुश्किल से याद किए थे नाम इसमें, लेकिन आप लोगों को पता होंगे. What does they do? Actually, PVPK30 and HPCD, they make a sustained release formation, and that sustained release formation is there for a longer period of time, and gradually products going to release and give the ocular surface what it really needs. उसके बाद pH is maintained by the boric acid. Boric acid has got 2 more functions, we'll discuss later, but yes, controlling of pH is very important, otherwise stingy feeling will be there. And then the isotonicity by the mannitol because it abstracts the water from the surrounding. Lubrication by HPMC and all those things which you already know about it. Then comes 2 things. Who are here, the last one is sterility and stability. What does that mean? Sterile means it should not cause any infection or something like that. Stable means what? हम नहीं जानते कि how the medication is stored by the pharmacy. हम नहीं जानते कि उसने दवा लाके किस रैक पे अपने घर में रखी है. The sterility will be maintained by boric acid and BAC. I'm sorry, but I need to mention BAC. Luckily, Dr. Hamza is not here. So, the BAC and boric acid. But PVPK30 and HPCD, the function of both these things is to protect the medication and the ingredient in it from the sunlight and the heat. These are the important points. So, the medication will be stable for a long period of time. Operating Hapta, again, these are the components we have already discussed. That how do they act? Then comes the ideal TS substitute. Now we have preservative-free medication, so that should be on top. And then we should target this specifically. But as I have mentioned, कि भाई हर आदमी के पास वो access नहीं है. Then what should I do? I should pick up a medication which should at least cover 2 or 3 layers. So let's see, do we have something? So these are the ingredients, so many ingredients. Yes, we take one by one. If we talk about Recro-PF, that's a preservative-free medication. Castor oil, which is there to protect the lipid layer, and the polysorbate 80, that is a surfactant which I mentioned initially in my presentation. अगर आप याद हो तो खैर, polysorbate 80 is basically a surfactant that will ultimately make what? A cationic emulsion, which will make a strong connection between the positive charge, this layer, and negative charge, this layer, and the stay time will be increased. Then comes acryptol and carboxymethyl for the viscosity enhancing. Then comes the down 3-1, which is working as osmoprotectant. Osmoprotectant means preventing the ocular surface and protecting the mucin layer. And then comes the boric acid, which will maintain the pH. Now, the teardrop UD clearly shows that it does not have anything to cover the lipid layer, but they have viscosity enhancing agent, the 3 topmost, and then 2 things for controlling of the pH, and again the osmoprotectant. So the second, third layer is protected by the both one, but the top layer is not covered by the teardrop UD. So which medication to be given to whom? As far as I know, as far as जो मेरा अपना मैंने बनाया हुआ है rough idea, if a person is elderly, दवा डालने के बाद उसको कंप्यूटर यूज नहीं करना, और अगर उसको ड्राइव नहीं करना, then the choice would be Recro-PF, because it will give thick layer, it will protect the lipid layer will give a thick layer, the thick layer will give you blurring and sometimes stickiness as well. So this should be kept in mind that yes, If something hasn't got the lipid layer, they have got the lipid layer, that will give you blurry. So in summary, we have allergic conjunctivitis. We started from our journey from allergic conjunctivitis. Through inflammation, it will damage the ocular surface, and then comes the dry eye. Now, what happens to dry eye? If someone is having a dry eye, two things are problem. One is the defective, and second is the deficient tear film. So the action of the tear film over here is basically two. One, to protect, to give a protection, to give a barrier to the surface, that the allergen which are moving across the world, that will not affect the eye. And second, that the flush out effect of the allergens. So what we have so many allergens, and that will again initiate the cascade from which the journey started. So the bottom line is that these two conditions are there, allergic conjunctivitis and the dry, and they coexist most of the time, but they need to be treated simultaneously but separately. And that's the requirement of the patient and the demand of today. Thank you.
Thank you, Shah. Experience with the new molecule in treating corneal ulcers.
I think none of us are being paid to be here. So Hudson Pharma has come up with something which is going to add to our armamentarium of antibiotics for the treatment of corneal ulcers. And probably today they are unveiling this product. So when they approached me for this talk, my first demand was that I'm going to use it on my patients, see the effect, and then I'm going to talk about it. So I was provided with a lot of samples that I gave to my corneal ulcer patients. To my good or bad fortune, we get a lot of that. I practice in an agriculture area, and corneal ulcers are very common there. Also, since I work in a tertiary care hospital, my patients, when they come to me, are not treatment naive. They already are on a plethora of antibiotics, which they have been using for quite a few days. And I'm sometimes surprised that they give me a history of even months. Like, you would imagine that a person who has a corneal ulcer, even the size of 1 millimeter, would probably, be so painful and irritant, and he will be suffering so much, probably he will be going to someone else. But then I get patients with histories of months of ulcers. So corneal ulcer is something which is sight-threatening. And since we also do keratoplasty, a major work of our keratoplasty work is being done on leukomas or adherent leukomas resulting from these corneal ulcers. That's what I'm going to talk about. And that's what we are going to focus on right today. What is corneal ulcer? Why is it happening? Most of you are very familiar with it. It's just an epithelial defect. But if you undertreat it, or if you let it go, if you take it easy, which unfortunately our patients are in the habit of doing, mild irritation, they put something in their eye, and I don't know what your experience is, but in my practice, I get people who use betnisol a lot, very, very unfortunately. They use betnisol. They get temporary relief, and that actually leads to this particular ulceration deepening, affecting the stroma, leading to perforations, leading to desmatoceles, and to any other complication of a corneal ulcer that you can think of, and they'll present to you with that particular complication. The cascade is what we have all been learning all our lives. It's just an epithelial compromise resulting in a microbial invasion. There's the resultant inflammatory and the necrotic response, and hence followed by healing and the resultant complication. You are lucky if you get treatment-naive patient and you can manage them, but luck, as I have seen, runs out. In my case, I don't get treatment-naive patients, rarely, if ever. This cascade continues. The ulcer continues to deepen. The stroma continues to be involved. We get all these inflammatory necrotic responses, and we end up with a patient who is having either extensive fibrosis, severe reduction in visual acuity, and sometimes an uncontrolled inflammation that leads to deep stromal involvement and attendant complications. So just a superficial ulcer you get, easy to treat. You give a single dosage. I think I'm not the only one. Probably all of us, the moment we see an ulcer, we start with the third generation, fourth generation fluoroquinolone. We start with that. And why is it so? Have you ever thought about it? Because this is the point to think about. Why do we start with the fourth generation? That's because we are also fed up by the resistance and the loss of response that we see to the other drugs, that the moment we see a corneal ulcer, the first thing you think of is moxifloxacin. And why? Because you think that, well, the sooner we treat it, the better off the patient is going to be. And definitely this deepening of the ulcer would not result. And as I said, we have an agricultural area. This is a major cause. Ocular surface disease, as I already have been mentioned. Low immune statuses, particularly patients who are already, and when it comes to low immune status, please keep diabetes in mind. We have an epidemic of diabetes in our country. Epidemic. Every other patient that you are going to see is going to be diabetic. So his immunity is compromised. Contact lens usage. When you start using contact lenses, you're very careful, you are changing your solutions, but once you get used to it, you get a bit careless. And once you get careless, hence you can end up with the infection. As I said, and I will repeat, betnisol should be banned in Pakistan. I'm sorry to say, but in my opinion, it should be banned because it is so available. You go to a general store, you can get betnisol eye drops. And this is what people do. They don't go to an ophthalmologist, they go to a general store and they tell us that मैंने betnisol डाली 3-4 दिन अक्सर नहीं हुआ तो फिर मैंने सोचा कि किसी को दिखा दें. Did you get that a lot? And dry eye, yes, also. That is now increasing because of our increasing screen times, because of our atmosphere, because of all the ozone layers that we are destroying every single day with every breath that we are taking. Let's just move on to the prevalence. Infectious keratitis is causing blindness in 18.7 million people in the world. Just think about it. That's million. And it is a significant cause of blindness in Pakistan. I think every center who is doing keratoplasty would agree with me that this is what you see a lot. And again, the cause is neglect of the situation and lack of treatment. Wow, and here we come to the drug. Why are we introducing this drug? What's the need for it? We already have a moxifloxacin. This is another fourth generation moxifloxacin. So we have all these armors, they have made their designs, and we have warriors, and we are carrying swords, and we are saying this is this technology, and this is dual technology, and this is doing God knows what in the world. Well, I'm a skeptical person. I don't believe what people say. I check it for myself. The best thing, the only thing probably that makes it different from any other moxifloxacin is because of the fact that you do not have to instill it every 2 hours. And it is because it is retained in the eye for a longer period of time, and the number of times that you use it is hardly 3 times a day. Just as Professor Naveed was just pointing out, that the surface or the tip of the eye drop, that container, contains probably more bacteria than the patient already had in his eye. So this Bessie drop basically has an enhanced potency, has dual targeting, better barrier resistance, and please focus. It is only for topical usage. Do not try to put it intracameral. We always think moxifloxacin aa gayi hai haath mein, let's go for it. No, it is not preservative free. It has a preservative which makes it the drug of choice in corneal ulcers, not to be used during operation. Per operative aapne use nahi karna. Please keep that in mind. This is important. And now they are going to charge me for saying that, but that doesn't matter. So it stays in the eye and the effect lasts for about 6 to 7 hours. That's the best thing about the drug. That's what we are talking about. That's what we want in a patient. जब आप पेशेंट को घर भेजते हैं और आपने उसको 6 दवाइयाँ लिख दी होती हैं, एक आपने उसको लिख के दी मॉक्सीफ्लॉक्सासिन, एक लिख दी फ्यूसिडिक एसिड, एक लिख दी फोर्टिफाइड एंटीबायोटिक, एक लिख दी एंटीफंगल, and then you don't end there, you go on for a cycloplegic. It doesn't end there, and you also give a kind of a pressure lowering drug just in case, like कहीं perforate ना हो जाए. मेरे ख्याल से काफ़ी सारे लोग ये कर रहे होंगे. 6 दवाइयाँ दे दी आपने उसको, 6 दवाइयाँ दे के आपने उसे कहा जाएं इसको घर जाके डालना शुरू कर दें. And he started instilling it one after the other and washing out the previous drug that he had instilled. So the low frequency of dosage is the best part of this particular medication that is going to be introduced probably at this forum. And they'll come to you and they'll tell you what they're doing. 7 a.m., 5 p.m., 9 p.m., 3 times a day, not that difficult, easy to remember, better compliance, and it's the same efficacy as the 4th generation moxifloxacin that you were already using. So, less number of instillation, less frequency of instillation with the same potency and the same action. This is what we're talking about, commonly used and the resistance that was already been discussed. And the lowest MICs. Instead of talking about these studies that are published, I'll tell you my personal experience. As I said, I'm a skeptical person and I don't believe what people say and I try to do things my way. So I did it my way. I gave it to my patients. And in 2 weeks, I saw that I used it in 14 patients, to be very frank. In 2 weeks, I had 14 patients. None of them were treated naive. And when I put them on Betsy drop, the size of the ulceration reduced, and they were less symptomatic than they were previously. I think with that, I would end my talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam, for a very discreet info on how to treat corneal ulcers.
I mean, excellent session, excellent talks. ये सब चीज़ें हम लोग रोज़ाना देखते हैं, and we treat them, and we evolve. मैं एक चीज़ हमेशा कहता हूँ, ये जो फार्मास्यूटिकल कंपनीज होती हैं ना, ये बड़ी तेज़ होती हैं. ये इधर उधर से घेर के हमें ले तो आती हैं अंदर, एंड देन वी टॉक एंड दे वर्क वेरी हार्ड. जस्ट जोक असाइड, दे वर्क वेरी हार्ड, लेकिन डू योर ओन ऑडिट. मैं हमेशा जूनियर्स जो बैठे हैं या जूनियर्स के जो सीनियर्स बैठे हैं, वो अपने जूनियर्स को बताएं कि अपना ऑडिट खुद करें, अपना ऑडिट खुद करें और ज़रूर यूज़ करें. जैसे डॉक्टर साहब ने कहा कि मैंने पहले यूज़ किया और उसके बाद मैंने आया. दिस इज़ एक्सीलेंट थिंग टू डू. कॉर्नियल इन्फेक्शंस को ट्रीट करना जो है वो आजकल बहुत सीवियर इन्फेक्शंस हैं. जैसे डॉक्टर हमज़ा भी बैठे हैं, एग्री करेंगे कि कॉर्नियल इन्फेक्शन का आपके पास केस आता है, फॉर्चुनेटली अगर पहले आ जाता है तो उसको आप स्क्रैपिंग ज़रूर करें, उसका कल्चर लेने की कोशिश ज़रूर करें, एंड देन यू स्टार्ट देम ऑन फोर्टिफाइड ड्रॉप्स. और अगर वाकई सीवियर इन्फेक्शन है तो हम उसको हाफ हार्टेडली या 3 दफ़ा दिन में यूज़ नहीं कर सकते. उसको हमें शुरू में दिन रात यूज़ कराना है अनटिल वी गेट द कल्चर, और फिर अकॉर्डिंगली चेंज करें. तो वो ड्रॉप्स डिफरेंट हैं, ये ड्रॉप्स डिफरेंट हैं. मैंने जो बात की थी, हम ओवर ट्रीट कर रहे हैं. मेरे ख्याल में हम अपने कैटरेक्ट पेशेंट, पोस्ट ऑपरेटिव पेशेंट्स को बहुत ओवर ट्रीट करते हैं. एंटीबायोटिक बहुत देर तक. एज़ फार एज बेटनिसोल इज़ कंसर्न, डॉक्टर साहब ने सही कहा, ये फार्मासिस्ट या दुकानों में मौजूद है और ये बहुत इमीडिएट रिलीफ देता है, बट इट्स अ टेम्प्रेरी रिलीफ एंड लॉन्ग टर्म डिज़ास्टर, एंड दैट शुड नॉट बी इशूड विदाउट एनी प्रिस्क्रिप्शन के साथ. तो yes, use antibiotics, but use with caution. Contact lens بہت commonly use ہوتا ہے. I've recently seen few eyes almost gone, completely necrotized with contact lens problem. اور اگر مجھ سے کوئی ینگ پر آ کے یا ان کی مدر پوچھتی ہیں ڈاکٹر صاحب کانٹیکٹ لینس یوز کر لیں, تو میرا ایک ہی جواب ہوتا ہے ایٹ یور اون رسک, ناٹ ایٹ مائی ریکمنڈیشن. میں چاہوں گا کہ آپ نہ یوز کریں. کمنگ بیک ٹو ڈرائی آئیز اینڈ الرجک آئی کنڈیشن, بہت کامن ہے. ڈرائی آئی وداؤٹ ریئلائزنگ, میرے خیال میں ایوری ون آف اس ہیز سفرڈ دوز سمٹمز وداؤٹ ایون ریئلائزنگ کہ ہمارے ڈرائی آئیز ہے. ایئر کنڈیشننگ میں بیٹھنا, ہیٹنگ سسٹم میں بیٹھنا, اوور ورک آن دا اسکرین آج کل بہت کامن ہے. بچوں میں 20-20 رول, میں نے ابھی ویڈیو بھی ایک ڈالی تھی کہ 20-20 رول کو فالو کریں. 20 منٹس کے بعد گیو اے بریک, ہیو اے بریک, یہ ضروری ہے. ہائیڈریٹ یور سیلف, ہم ہائیڈریشن نہیں کرتے, ہم پانی ہی نہیں پیتے, تو ہم نے ڈراپس کیا ڈالنے. پیشنٹ کی ایجوکیشن بہت ضروری ہے, پیرنٹس کی ایجوکیشن بہت ضروری ہے. الرجک ڈیزیز, آئی سی اے لاٹ آف الرجک ڈیزیز, اینڈ میں سب کا امیونوگلوبولن ای تو بہت ضروری کراتا ہوں. سب کو کہتا ہوں کہ دیکھیں ذرا آئی جی ای لیول کیا ہے آپ کا, تھاؤزنڈس میں آ رہے ہوتے ہیں. اور سم ٹائم اٹس ایکچولی نارمل. سو آکولر الرجی از اے سیپریٹ کنڈیشن ہے, آپ کو جسم میں نہیں ہے لیکن آکولر الرجی ہے, اور اس کے گریڈز ہیں کس طریقے سے یوز کرنے ہیں. پریزرویٹو فری ڈراپس, ونڈرفل ڈراپس ہمیں بہت ضروری ہیں. لانگ ٹرم میں جو یوز کرنے ہیں پریزرویٹو فری ڈراپس اویلیبل ہونے چاہیے. لانگ ٹرم کون پیشنٹ یوز کرتے ہیں؟ ڈرائی آئی والے یوز کرتے ہیں, الرجی والے یوز کرتے ہیں, اور گلوکوما پیشنٹ یوز کرتے ہیں. سو گلوکوما پیشنٹس اکثر جو بہت زیادہ ڈراپس یوز کرتے ہیں اینٹی گلوکوما, دے ڈو ہیو آکولر سرفیس ڈیزیز. کل میرا صبح ایک اسی پہ ڈفرینشیل ڈرائی آئی سنڈروم پہ لیکچر ہیں, اور اس میں ول ٹاک اباؤٹ اٹ. پوسٹ لیسک ٹریٹمنٹ کے پیشنٹ جو ہیں ڈرائی آئی. سو آئی یوز اینٹی انفلیمیٹری, آئی یوز سائکلوسپورین لاٹ 0.01, 0.01, 0.1, 0.5%. ویریس وہ ہمیں بنا کے ہم آغا خان سے میں یوز کراتا ہوں, اینڈ آئی یوز دیم لاٹ. بہت سے لوگ ہیں جو کمپلیٹلی ڈسٹرائڈ گلینڈس کے ساتھ, اسٹیون جانسن سنڈروم آپ لے لیں, بٹ دے ڈو گیٹ کمفرٹ آن دیز سائکلوسپورین. تو ٹریٹ دا پیشنٹ اکارڈنگ ٹو دیئر نیڈ. پہلے ان سے پوچھ ضرور لیں کہ وہ کیا کرتے ہیں, اپنا لائف اسٹائل چینج کریں, ان کو بتائیں کہ اپنے آپ کو ہائیڈریٹ کریں, ہیلتھ اچھی رکھیں, انوائرمنٹ اپنا اچھا رکھیں, ڈراپس ایز ریکوائرڈ یوز کریں ایز اے پروفیلیکسس, اینڈ وین اٹس نیڈیڈ. کمپلائنس پرابلم ہے ہمارے پاس. پیشنٹ, ایک پوسٹ آپریٹو پیشنٹ آیا اور اس نے کہا سر آپ نے کہا تھا نا 3 دن کا پرہیز, تو میں نے کہا تھا ہاں 3 دن آپ نے آنکھ میں پانی نہیں ڈالنا, رب نہیں کرنا. جی سر میں نے یہ کیا, میں 3 دن کے بعد ڈراپس بھی بند کر دیے تھے. اینڈ دس پیشنٹ کیم آفٹر 1 month. دا آئی واز کمپلیٹلی کوائٹ. اور یہاں سے کبھی کبھی ہمیں فیل ہوتا ہے کہ وی ڈو اوور ٹریٹ, یہ نہیں کہ 3 دن کے بعد بند کر دیں, لیکن یا سو آئی تھنک اٹس اے good session, wonderful talks, and thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I thank the speakers, the participants, and Hudson Pharma for participating in this enlightening session. Thank you very much.